This is a story about love, after everything. Tell me where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The Noir Harbor restaurant suddenly went still. Silver forks froze mid-air. Crystal glasses stopped halfway to waiting lips. The entire elegant dining room by Vancouver's harbor felt as if the air had been drained from it. At the center of the room, a 5-year-old boy was screaming himself hoarse, his face flushed red, his breath coming in broken gasps as if his lungs were fighting his own body. His tiny hands clamped tightly over his ears, his legs kicked wildly against the velvet-upholstered chair. Above him, the chandelier lights blazed down, harsh and blinding like a miniature sun. The man standing beside him, Julian Ashford, the famously cold billionaire, looked nothing like the images printed in the media. There was no control, no authority, only a lost father. His lips moved, forming useless pleas. "Sit down, just for a moment, please." No one heard him. The crying swallowed everything. The restaurant manager signaled to security. Judgmental glances spread through the room like an oil slick. Rich people's kids behave like this. No discipline. How embarrassing. Then something no one expected happened. A waitress in a dark apron stepped past the line of guards. No permission, no hesitation. She knelt on the wet floor amid the scent of expensive caviar. Maya Collins, a woman with only $17 left in her bank account. She did not touch the child. She did not soothe him. She did not apologize. She simply lowered herself to his eye level and whispered, very softly, "You are not bad. You are scared." The crying stuttered, just for a beat. The evening service at Noir Harbor always ran like a perfect machine, and Maya was its smallest cog. 25 years old, 2 shifts back-to-back, cheap non-slip shoes made her heels burn as if they were bleeding. She was used to lowering her head, to being called by her last name, to absolute cleanliness. Here, a small mistake did not lead to a warning. It led to the back door. Gareth Pike, the shift manager, stood near the bar. His eyes narrowed when he saw Maya stop. That look was familiar. Always ready to punish, always ready to discard. But Maya did not look at him. Every sense she had was locked onto the boy, Noah Ashford. She did not know his name, but she knew that feeling. The light was too bright, the noise too dense. Every knife touching a plate felt like an invisible cut. His body was not rebelling. It was calling for help. Julian stared at her as if she were an apparition. He had never seen anyone dare to step in like this. He had tried everything, a tablet, promises, commands. Nothing worked. His son's crying felt like an accusation. He had billions of dollars, yet he could not buy a single moment of peace for his child. Maya lowered her voice even further. She spoke of the lights as angry bees, of clashing metal like swords striking shields. She began to hum, not a song, just a steady vibration, low and grounded, coming from her chest. Her hand tapped lightly against the floor, slow, even. Noah looked at her, eyes wet and unfocused. He copied her. One small finger tapped the floor, then another. His breathing gradually found its rhythm. The room held its breath. "The boy needs a mother," Maya said, lifting her gaze to Julian. "Not a manager, not someone who gives orders, a safe place." The words landed like a stone, quiet but deep. Noah crawled toward her, not toward his father. He curled into the arms of the waitress with the stained apron. The crying softened, grew smaller, like rain after a storm. Julian felt a sharp ache in his chest, a feeling that was both gratitude and fear, as if someone had just touched the most hidden part of him. Gareth rushed forward, his voice sharp. "What do you think you are doing?" But Julian straightened, his voice dropping, cold enough to cut through any objection. "Do not touch her." Whispers turned into silence. Julian placed a black card on the table, extra compensation, and a tip for her. "We are leaving." As he carried Noah toward the door, the boy looked back. A tiny hand waved. "Goodbye, miss." Maya smiled, her heart tightening with a nameless sadness. Julian paused at the threshold. He turned, his dark gaze locking onto her. "Thank you." The door closed. Noir Harbor's machinery started up again. Murmured voices, background music, as if nothing had happened. Maya stood in the middle of the room, knees cold and wet, hands trembling slightly. She did not know that this moment had just opened a secret buried for many years, and she did not know that from this second on, her life had taken a turn from which there was no way back. After the doors of Noir Harbor closed behind the Ashford father and son, the restaurant's breathing slowly returned to normal. The clink of forks and spoons rose again, hesitant at first, then quickly settling into a natural rhythm, as if everyone had silently agreed to forget what had just happened. For most diners, it was nothing more than an awkward moment in an expensive meal. For Maya Collins, it was a mark that could never be erased. She returned to the service counter and straightened the apron that was now wet and stained. Her hands were still shaking, not from fear, but from the lingering sensation of small arms that had clung to her as if she were the only lifeline in a roaring sea. The feeling was strangely familiar, like an old memory surfacing before she could give it a name. Gareth Pike stood there with his arms crossed, lips pressed tight, his mustache twitching with each restrained breath. He waited until Maya set down her tray before speaking. "Who do you think you are?" His voice was not loud, but it was sharp enough to cut the air. Maya lowered her head on instinct. "I'm sorry, sir." "Sorry," Gareth scoffed softly. "You knelt on the floor in front of guests. You broke every rule. You made me look like an amateur in front of people who spend tens of thousands of dollars on a single dinner." Maya stayed silent. She had no intention of explaining. Explanations had never saved anyone here. She knew exactly who she was in Gareth's eyes, a replaceable waitress, a name on a schedule, a mistake waiting to be crossed out. But when she closed her eyes, the image of the boy covering his ears was still painfully clear, and she knew that if time were reversed, she would do the same thing again. Gareth lowered his voice. "After this shift, pack your things. Don't come back." The words fell lightly, without drama or anger, just a verdict that had been prepared long ago. Maya nodded. Yes. The shift ended at 11 at night. Maya changed in the cramped staff room, the flickering fluorescent light making her face look paler than usual. She put her shoes into a paper bag, her apron into the locker. When she returned to the counter to collect the final tips of the night, Gareth was already there. "The compensation money from earlier," he said, "will go into the restaurant's general fund to cover damages and the emotional distress of the guests." Maya understood immediately. That money would never reach her. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had no money for a lawyer, no strength to argue, and honestly, she was exhausted. Outside, Vancouver at night was colder than she expected. A light rain fell, and wind from the harbor carried the scent of salt and metal. Maya pulled her thin jacket tight and walked down to the bus stop. In her pocket were $17 and a monthly pass that was nearly expired. Her rented room was in an old neighborhood in the south of the city, a studio if one used the proper term, in reality just enough space for a bed, a sink, and a window facing a gray brick wall. Maya opened the door and turned on the light. The weak glow illuminated a sheet of paper taped to the inside of the door. Final notice. Outstanding balance. Move-out deadline. Maya slid down against the floor. She did not cry. She had forgotten how a long time ago. Tears require energy, and she had none left. On the bedside shelf sat the only thing she carried through every move, a faded ultrasound photo from 4 years ago. She picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm trying." Elsewhere in the city, Julian Ashford sat in the back seat of a black car moving along the coastal road. Noah was fast asleep in the rear seat, his breathing steadier now, one hand still clutching his father's jacket. Julian looked into the rearview mirror. The image of the waitress kneeling in the middle of the restaurant would not leave his mind. She knew not his name, not his status, she knew his son's fear. Julian picked up his phone. A name appeared on the screen. Background check. Maya Collins. He pressed send. In that moment, Maya had no idea that an invisible thread had just been pulled tight between two worlds that were never meant to touch, and that losing her job tonight was only the first price she would pay for a far greater truth quietly moving toward her. Julian Ashford had never been afraid of the dark. He was used to sealed boardrooms, to cold numbers flickering across screens, to decisions that could cost thousands of people their jobs with a single nod. Fear, to him, was something manageable, something that could buy time, be postponed, be pushed to tomorrow. Until he had a child. The car glided along the coastal road, the lights of Vancouver slowly falling away behind them like a painting being pulled into the distance. Julian sat upright in the front seat, hands resting on his knees, not relaxed at all. In the back seat, Noah slept fitfully. Each time the car hit a pothole or the wind whistled harder against the windows, the boy curled in on himself, his brow tightening as if even his dreams offered no peace. Julian glanced into the rearview mirror. The scene in the restaurant replayed again and again in his mind, out of order, refusing to fade. The crying, the lights, the unfamiliar faces, and then a girl kneeling on the floor. He did not understand why he remembered it so clearly, the way she lowered her voice, the steady rhythm of her hand tapping against the stone floor, the way Noah had crawled toward her without being called, as if his body itself knew where safety lived. Julian clenched his jaw. The familiar, merciless sense of helplessness rose inside him. He had tried everything: doctors, specialists, private preschools with only a handful of children, noise-canceling headphones, a separate playroom. There was no lack of money, no lack of people. But whenever Noah fell into panic, all of it became meaningless. It was not a tantrum. Julian knew that, even if many others did not. It was pure fear, an uncontrollable reflex, as if the world around his son had suddenly turned hostile. And what hurt him most was the moment Noah called for his mother. Elena had been gone for 3 years. 3 years that had passed like a gust of wind for the outside world, yet for Julian, each day still carried the same crushing weight. He did not cry. He had never cried in front of his son. He thought he was doing the right thing, being strong, being steady. But perhaps that very silence had created a hollow no one could fill. The car turned onto the road leading up to Ravenshaw Estate. The iron gates opened without a sound. The house rose dark and massive against the night, garden lights casting a cold glow across stone walls. Julian stepped out of the car and went around to lift Noah into his arms. The boy pressed his face into Julian's neck, the familiar scent of his hair tightening something deep in Julian's chest. He laid his son on the bed and pulled the blanket up carefully. Noah did not wake, but his small hand still clutched Julian's sleeve, as if letting go would cause the world to collapse again. Julian sat on the edge of the bed and did not pull his hand away. He studied his son's face in the dim glow of the nightlight. 5 years old, too young to understand why his mother was gone, too sensitive to endure the clumsy explanations of adults. Julian whispered an apology, even though he knew Noah could not hear it. Downstairs in the study, the tablet screen lit up. His assistant had sent a preliminary report. Maya Collins, 25 years old, no recorded immediate family. Worked at 5 different restaurants over 3 years, never sued, never involved in scandal. Temporary address in the southern part of the city, financially unstable. Julian read slowly, not out of curiosity, but because a familiar feeling was stirring, an irrational sense of connection. He remembered the way Maya had looked at Noah, not with pity, not with panic, but with a calm understanding that was almost unsettling, as if she had been there herself. He closed the tablet and stepped out onto the balcony. The night sea lay thick and black in the distance, waves striking the cliffs in a steady rhythm. Julian drew a deep breath. He had fired 4 nannies in 2 months. Some were too rigid. Some fled after the first panic attack. No one lasted. He did not need a perfect caregiver. He needed someone Noah trusted. And that frightened him. Because admitting that meant facing a truth he had long avoided, that money could not replace presence, that power could not force a sense of safety, that there were cracks in this house only a stranger in a worn uniform had noticed. Julian returned to his son's bedroom. Noah shifted and sighed in his sleep. Julian placed a hand gently on his back, applying light pressure, just as Maya had done. For the first time in months, he felt a fragile thread of hope. And for the first time, he wondered whether he was about to step into a terrible mistake. Outside, the waves continued to strike the rocks, patient and relentless. And somewhere in the city, Maya Collins was sleeping on a cold bed, unaware that her fate had just been pulled into the orbit of a man who had everything except an answer to his own fear. Morning arrived slowly and heavily, as if the city itself were deliberately stretching out Maya Collins's exhaustion. She woke when dull gray light slipped through the narrow window gap and landed on the brick wall across from her. There was no alarm clock, no work schedule to check. Only a hollow feeling suspended in her chest, like a room that had just been stripped of all its furniture. Maya lay still for a few minutes, listening to buses passing outside and the distant horn of ships from the harbor. Those sounds had once been the familiar backdrop of her life. Today they felt foreign. She sat up and lowered her feet onto the cold floor. Her service shoes were placed neatly beside the bed, cleaned the night before out of habit. Maya looked at them for a moment, then turned away. Habit is the last thing to let go when everything else has already left. The previous afternoon replayed in her mind in sharp, fragmented pieces. Gareth Pike standing straight behind the counter, his voice flat, as if reciting a notice he had memorized. After this shift, pack your things, don't come back, no reprimand, no paperwork, just a single sentence that ended everything. Maya remembered nodding, remembered the strange sensation of realizing she was not surprised at all. She had known that moment would come, she just had not expected it to come so fast, not because she had done something wrong, but because she had done something right in a way that was not allowed. She opened the small refrigerator. Inside was a carton of milk near its expiration date and a slice of stale bread. Maya ate slowly, not because she was hungry, but because she was not ready to face the rest of the day. When she turned to close the door, the paper taped to the inside hit her eyes again. Final notice. Outstanding balance. Vacate within 2 days. Maya took a deep breath. She pulled the paper down, folded it carefully, and placed it on the table as if it were an object that deserved respect. For 4 years she had lived with red numbers, bills, rent, late fees, always running, always calculating, always standing at the edge. This time, there was nowhere left to retreat. She put on her jacket, slipped her wallet into her pocket, and stepped outside. Daytime Vancouver was colder than night in a different way. The wind carried dampness and the scent of metal. Maya walked to the bus stop, mentally listing places where she might find work. The corner cafe, the bakery under the bridge, a small restaurant in the industrial district. She knew how she looked in the mirror. Too tired, too tense. Managers could smell desperation from a distance. The first 3 places turned her away without hesitation. Not hiring, not a fit. Leave your number, we'll call. Maya nodded, smiled politely, and walked on. That smile was like a thin jacket, enough to block the wind for a few seconds, then useless. By noon, she sat on a park bench near the harbor. Gray water rippled under weak light. Maya counted the loose change in her hand, enough for a sandwich or a bus ticket to a shelter, not enough for both. She let out a small laugh, not happy, not sad, just acknowledging a bare truth. She pulled a carefully folded item from her jacket pocket, an old ultrasound photo, its edges worn. 4 years ago. Maya stared at the faint image, her thumb brushing lightly over the paper. She did not say the words aloud, but inside, the familiar apology surfaced again. I'm trying. I really am. A low sound cut through her thoughts. Maya looked up. A matte black SUV had just pulled up to the curb. The rear door opened. Not the kind of car that usually stopped in this neighborhood. Not the kind of person who usually stepped out. A man in a dark suit walked toward her, posture straight, eyes alert. Maya tightened her grip on her bag strap. If this was about the uniform, she had left it in her locker. If it was about the tip money, she had never touched it. Maya Collins, the man said, his voice low and unhurried. She stood up on instinct. Who's asking? Mr. Ashford would like to speak with you. The name made the air around her feel heavier. The restaurant, the child, the father's eyes. Everything rushed back at once. Maya opened her mouth, then closed it again. She did not know whether she should be afraid or laugh. I didn't take anything, she said quickly. If this is about yesterday, I already... The man shook his head and raised his phone. The screen lit up. A live video feed. a spacious room, toys scattered across the floor. In the center of the frame, a young boy was sobbing, both hands clamped over his ears. Even through the phone speaker, the sound was enough to tighten Maya's chest. "He hasn't stopped since this morning," the man said. "Mr. Ashford is desperate." Maya stared at the screen. She saw the familiar fear in every movement of the child. That sensation did not need explaining. It lived deep in the body, beyond where reason could reach. "I'm not a nanny," Maya said, though her voice no longer sounded certain. "Mr. Ashford is offering $10,000 for 1 hour," the man replied. $10,000. The number rang in Maya's head like a bell. A year of rent, a way out, a chance to start over. She looked down at the bus ticket in her hand, then at the polished black vehicle in front of her. Maya closed her eyes for a second. "Okay," she said, "1 hour only. I'm not staying. I'm not promising anything else." She closed her eyes again, not to pray, but to ask herself what she was selling. Time, presence, or a part of her past she had been trying to bury. She opened her eyes. Okay. The car door opened. Maya stepped inside. When the door closed behind her, the sound echoed clearly in her mind, like another door closing at the same time. The car pulled away from the harbor. Maya leaned back against the seat, her heart pounding. She did not know where she was going. She only knew that from this moment on, everything had begun to slip out of its old orbit, and she was no longer sure she wanted to pull it back. The car turned off the coastal road as the sun slipped low, leaving a thin strip of light like a cut across the water. Maya Collins leaned back against the seat, hands resting on her knees, trying to keep her breathing steady. Each turn of the wheels over gravel sounded like a reminder that she was moving away from the last familiar thing she had left. The gates of Ravenshore opened without a sound. Metal slid aside slowly and precisely. The driveway curved through lawns trimmed to an almost emotionless perfection. The house rose at the end of the path, gray stone and wide glass, standing quietly like a fortress facing the sea. There were no decorative lights, no sign of welcome, only the silence of a place too large to hold human presence. Maya stepped out of the car. Sea wind rushed into her collar, cold and salty. She pulled her jacket tighter, feeling the hard certainty of stone beneath her feet. Before she could take in anything more, the front door opened. Julian Ashford stood in the doorway. He looked nothing like he had in the restaurant. The polished stillness was gone. A dark shirt slightly wrinkled, loose sweatpants, stubble along his jaw. Dark circles under his eyes as if he had not slept for nights. When he saw Maya, he paused for a brief beat, as if unsure she would truly come. "You're here," he said. His voice was low, without authority, carrying only exhausted relief. Maya nodded. She did not offer small talk. The vast entry hall swallowed the sound of their footsteps. High ceilings, cold stone floors, echoes stretching out and making every movement feel louder than it needed to be. "Where is he?" Maya asked. Julian turned. "The library. Since this morning." There was no explanation, no apology, just a fact spoken after every other option had been exhausted. Maya followed him down a long corridor. Paintings lined the walls. Soft lighting kept the space from sinking entirely into darkness. This house had everything except the feeling that someone lived in it. The library door opened. The scent of old paper and polished wood spilled out. Tall shelves reached the ceiling, standing still like silent guards. But at the center of the room was a different scene. Books pulled from shelves lay scattered across the floor. A desk lamp tipped over. Beneath the large wooden table, a pocket of darkness gathered, a blanket curled tight, and inside it, Noah. Maya stopped at the doorway. She did not call his name. She did not bend down. She walked slowly, set her bag aside, then sat on the floor at a distance from the table that did not intrude. The cold stone seeped through the thin fabric of her clothes. She accepted the sensation as part of the ritual. From her jacket pocket, she took out a piece of paper folded in advance. Not a toy bought with money, just a paper boat folded from a bus napkin. Maya placed it on the floor and gently pushed it forward with her fingertip. The boat slid into the darkness beneath the table. The crying stuttered. It did not stop completely, but it slowed. A small hand reached out and grasped the boat. Silence stretched for a few breaths. Then Noah's face appeared, eyes red, wary, yet curious. Maya lowered her voice to almost a whisper. It only moves when it's quiet. Noah looked at her, looked at the boat, then crawled out of his hiding place. There was no screaming, no resistance. He went straight to Maya and climbed into her lap as if his body had decided long before his mind caught up. Maya wrapped her arms around him, just enough. No squeezing, no excessive soothing. She simply sat there, a steady point. Noah's breathing gradually slowed, his heartbeat settled. The world shrank to a size that no longer hurt him. Julian stood at the doorway. He did not step inside. His throat tightened as he watched. The way his son rested his head against this woman's chest. The way the room grew quiet, as if it had finally allowed itself to rest. "How did you do that?" Julian asked softly. Maya did not look at him. She brushed Noah's back gently. "I didn't do anything. I just listened." Julian took one step forward, then stopped. He studied Maya closely. Worn shoes, a thin jacket, yet in the way she occupied the space was a steadiness this house had lacked for a long time. Not control, but permission. Noah was asleep. His breathing was even, the paper boat clutched in his hand. Maya did not move, as if afraid that even the smallest change would break the spell. Julian drew a deep breath. In that moment, he understood something that filled him with both fear and hope. 1 hour would not be enough. And this woman, somehow, had entered his house as if she belonged there all along. Outside, the waves struck the cliffs in a steady rhythm, slow and patient, like a final breath Ravenshaw had forgotten long ago. Noah slept for nearly an hour. He did not startle. He did not drift into nightmares. His breathing was so steady that Maya had to listen carefully to be sure he was still breathing at all. She did not dare move. Her arms slowly went numb, her back ached, but she remained still, like part of an invisible chair he had chosen. The paper boat rested neatly in Noah's hand, its edges beginning to soften from his warmth. Julian had been leaning against the doorframe for some time. He did not check the clock. He did not think about time. The scene before him felt so fragile that any movement might shatter it. Part of him wanted to say thank you. The rest feared that the moment he spoke, everything would disappear. When Maya gently adjusted her position to lower Noah onto the thick rug, Julian stepped in to help pull the blanket over him. They worked together without speaking, an odd harmony, as if they had practiced this before. Once Noah was settled, Maya stood and rubbed her wrist lightly. She looked around the library for the first time since entering. Spacious, beautiful, and empty. "Can we talk for a moment?" Julian asked quietly, his voice careful. Maya nodded and followed him into the hallway, closing the library door behind them. As the door shut, the house seemed to exhale. Their footsteps echoed softly, stretching through the space. Julian led her to a small room overlooking the sea, with a simple wooden table and 2 chairs. He invited her to sit, not with the gesture of someone used to giving orders, but with the hesitation of someone afraid of being refused. "Thank you," Julian said after a pause. "I've hired many people. No one has done what you just did." Maya rested her hands on her knees. "I didn't do anything special." He needed quiet, and he needed to be listened to. Julian nodded slightly. He looked out at the sea for a moment, then back at her. "I know I said 1 hour, but I want to ask you to stay." Maya did not answer right away. She let the first feelings pass, caution, suspicion, the familiar sensation of someone with money trying to solve a problem with a number. "Stay how?" she asked. "As a live-in caregiver," Julian replied. "Full-time. A salary of $100,000 a year, insurance included, a private guest house on the property. You won't have to worry about rent anymore." The words landed softly, yet their weight made the room seem to tilt. Maya clenched her fingers. $100,000, not because of the number itself, but because of what it represented, a life without constant running, a moment to breathe. "I'm not the person you're looking for," Maya said, keeping her voice calm. "I don't have qualifications. I don't have formal experience." Julian looked at her. "I don't need qualifications. I need someone my son trusts." Another silence followed, Wind struck the glass, reminding them that the world outside still existed. "Is there a condition?" Maya asked. She had learned to ask that question long ago. Julian slowed. "There is." He stood and walked to the window. When he turned back, his expression had changed, harder, closed. "There is a part of this house," he said, "that you are not allowed to enter. The east wing, the top floor. For any reason. If you violate this, the contract ends immediately. No exceptions." Maya looked at him. She did not ask why. She recognized that tone, the voice of someone building walls not to protect property, but to bury something. "I understand," she said. Julian seemed to release a breath. He returned to the table and took out a stack of papers. The contract was already prepared, as if he had known this moment would come. Maya took the pen. She did not sign immediately. She thought of the silent rented room, the ultrasound photo on the shelf, Noah sleeping peacefully behind the closed door, and Julian's eyes when he looked at his son, full of love and fear at once. "I have one condition," she said. Julian looked up. "I am not a miracle. I don't fix everything. I'm staying for the boy, not for the money. And if I feel you're using me for anything else, I will leave." Julian nodded without hesitation. "Agreed." Maya signed her name. As the final ink dried, something invisible shifted with it. No noise, no announcement, just the quiet movement of two strangers deciding to stand on the same side. That evening, Julian walked Maya to the guest house, a small stone cottage covered in vines, with a fireplace and windows facing the garden. When he left, he paused on the steps. "You gave Ravenshaw something it had forgotten," Julian said. Quiet. Maya watched him disappear into the dark. Inside her, fear and hope intertwined so tightly they could not be separated. She did not know what awaited her behind the forbidden door of the East Wing. She only knew that tonight she had chosen to stay. And that choice, once again, did not allow her to turn back. 3 weeks passed without announcement. There was no clear marker, no special day to circle on a calendar, only a very slow settling, like water after a long wind. Ravenshaw did not change its shape, but its breathing did. The house stopped echoing. The hallways stopped feeling cold, and mornings began to include the sound of bare feet running across wooden floors. Noah woke earlier than before, not from panic but from anticipation. He learned to open the curtains and let light into the room little by little. Maya taught him to choose his headphones before going downstairs, taught him to place a hand on his chest to feel his breathing when the world grew too loud. There were days he still froze, still trembled, but he did not scream. He looked at Maya, and Maya was there. They spent time in the back garden where the sea wind blew just strong enough to carry away sharp sounds. Maya and Noah hunted insects, floated paper boats in the fountain, counted clouds drifting past the glass roof. She taught him how to tie his shoelaces, step by step, slowly, without rushing. When he got it wrong, she did not correct him right away. She waited. Noah learned that no one left when he needed more time. In the kitchen, the smell of toasted bread replaced the house's cold, metallic scent. Jean-Pierre, the French chef, frowned when Maya added extra cheese to the sandwich, but Noah ate and smiled enough to dissolve all objections. Julian still left before dawn and returned after dark. Work did not loosen its grip on him, long calls, thick reports, endless decisions. Yet something changed in the way he entered the house. He paused at the library doorway to listen. He stood on the second-floor balcony, looking down at the garden where Noah and Maya chased each other, laughter breaking apart and dissolving into the wind. On his face appeared an unfamiliar feeling, not quite happiness, but regret for how much he had missed. On rare evenings, Julian stayed to eat with them. No work talk, no phone. He sat across from Maya, watching the way she arranged Noah's utensils in a precise order, the way she waited for his nod before changing a dish. He realized he was learning not how to parent, but how to be still. One night, after Noah had fallen asleep, Julian brought out 2 cups of hot tea. They sat by the window facing the sea. Wind tapped gently against the glass. Neither of them rushed to speak. The silence between them was no longer tense. It had shape. It had weight. I used to think quiet meant emptiness, Julian said softly. Turns out it has to be built. Maya did not answer right away. She watched the steam rise from her cup and fade. Quiet is not the absence of sound, she said. It is the absence of defense. Julian nodded. A moment passed. His hand rested near hers on the table, not touching, but close enough that they both noticed. On other evenings, Julian remained on the edge. He did not step into their space. He feared breaking something fragile and feared realizing that he wanted to be there more than he was allowed. He reminded himself of boundaries, of contracts, of the forbidden East Wing. But the walls inside him began to crack, very small, very slow. Maya sensed it. She did not push. She did not pull away. She kept the rhythm because she knew the best things usually arrived when no one tried to grip too tightly. One afternoon, Noah fell and scraped his knee. Not badly, but enough to scare him. He grabbed Maya's hand, then looked at Julian rushing toward them. For the first time, he reached out his other hand to his father. No calling, no forcing. Julian froze, then took it. The three of them stood there, very close, very still. Night fell. Sea wind carried a chill. Maya returned to the guest house and lit the fireplace. She thought of the ultrasound photo still tucked in her coat pocket. She was not ready to speak yet, but the weight of hiding had begun to grow heavier. On the other side of the estate, Julian stood at his study window, looking toward the East Wing, its door tightly shut, secrets sleeping behind it. He knew this peace was fragile. He knew something would eventually force them to face what lay ahead. But tonight, he allowed himself to believe in the house's steady breathing, in the patient sound of waves, in the woman who arrived without promises and stayed without claiming anything. Ravenshore, after a long time, finally learned how to sleep. Cassandra Vale arrived at Ravenshore one unannounced afternoon. The sharp rhythm of her high heels struck the stone floor like cold taps, breaking the quiet the house had only just learned to protect. Maya was sitting on the floor of the family room, sorting colored blocks with Noah. He was focused, the tip of his tongue peeking out at the corner of his mouth. When the unfamiliar sound reached him, Noah froze. His shoulders lifted. His breathing changed. Maya placed her hand over the back of his hand without looking toward the door. "Here," she whispered, "safe." The front door swung open. Cassandra stepped inside as if the space belonged to her alone. Platinum blonde hair styled to perfection. A sharply tailored white suit, expensive enough that it did not need explanation. Her gaze swept through the room, appraising everything in an instant, then stopped on Maya. "Oh," Cassandra said. "So this is the new one." Her voice was smooth, but a blade lay beneath it. Noah tightened his grip on Maya's hand. Maya stood, set the block down, kept her back straight. "I'm Maya," she said. "I take care of Noah." Cassandra tilted her head, smiling as if evaluating an object. "Take care. Interesting. How many has Julian tried now? 4 or 5? She looked at Noah, her eyes softening not at all. He immediately stepped back half a pace. Julian appeared at the end of the hallway. He stopped when he saw Cassandra. "Cassandra," he said, "you're early." "I'm never late for important things," Cassandra replied, moving to link her arm through his with practiced familiarity. She turned back to Maya. "I'm here to discuss the fundraising gala this weekend. Save the Coast Initiative. I'm hosting it. The press will be here." "A lot of people." Noah began to rock slightly, the familiar rhythm of overload approaching. Maya stepped to the side, forming a gentle barrier between him and Cassandra. She bent and whispered breathing counts. Noah followed. Slower. Cassandra frowned. She did not like being excluded from a space, especially one that was functioning perfectly without her. "I hope," she said, her eyes locking on Maya, "that the evening goes smoothly. We wouldn't want any awkward scenes, especially involving children." Julian stiffened. "Noah will be upstairs," he said. "Safe." "Good," Cassandra replied, then smiled. "You seem devoted, Maya. But don't misunderstand. This is only a temporary solution. A bandage over a deep wound." Maya remained silent. She was used to this kind of judgment, but when Cassandra turned away, she noticed Noah watching her, eyes wide. He did not speak. He only shook his head very slightly. The afternoon dragged on heavily. Event staff arrived to inspect the space. Flowers were brought in. Plans were discussed loudly in the hallways. The sound thickened, sharpened. Maya proactively took Noah upstairs early, drew the curtains, turned on soft lighting. He lay still, but his hands clutched the pillow. When Noah fell asleep, Maya went downstairs to get water. On the stair landing overlooking the grand hall, she stopped. Julian stood in the center of the room in a suit, speaking with several men. Cassandra stood close beside him, laughing louder than necessary, her hand resting on his arm like a mark of ownership. A small tightness formed in Maya's chest, not jealousy, just a sense of dissonance, like a wrong note in a harmony that had just begun to form. Cassandra looked up and caught Maya's gaze. Her smile shifted. She moved toward the stairs, each step slow, deliberate. "Getting water for the boy?" Cassandra asked, her voice lower, closer. "Yes," Maya replied. Cassandra leaned in, the faint scent of alcohol brushing the air. "Julian talks about you a lot," she said. "Says you're a miracle, that Noah has never been calmer. Hearing things like that gets tiring." Maya did not answer. She turned away. Cassandra laughed softly behind her. "You should remember your place," she said. "Everything here has an order, and those who don't belong to it tend to disappear on their own." Maya continued on. In her hand, the glass of water trembled slightly. She took a deep breath. Upstairs, Noah was breathing evenly. Safe. That was all that mattered. Down in the hall, Julian watched Cassandra, then looked up at the now empty staircase. A flicker of unease passed through him. He did not call for Maya, but for the first time, he realized that the peace they had found had drawn attention, and eyes like Cassandra Vale's never simply watched. Outside, the sea remained patient, but inside Ravenshore, another kind of wave had begun to form. The evening of the gala arrived with light. Ravenshore took on a different face. A red carpet stretched from the gates to the front steps. White flowers lined the railings. Music flowed steadily, calculated to be elegant enough, distant enough. Dark suits moved like a programmed current. Long gowns shimmered under the lights, reflecting wealth that required no explanation. Maya was upstairs in Noah's room. The curtains were drawn. The light was warm and soft. Headphones were placed on the table, in the right spot, in the right order. She read him a short story, her voice even and low, without dramatic peaks. Noah lay on his side, the paper boat pressed against his chest. Music from the main hall drifted up like distant waves. He frowned, but did not panic. Maya paused, placed a hand on his back, waited for his breathing to steady, then continued. When Noah whispered that he wanted water, Maya stood very quietly. She left the door slightly ajar, placed the small chair at the edge as a familiar signal. She knew nights like this required twice the caution, not because of the people downstairs, but because of the sounds they carried with them. The upper hallway was empty. Maya walked slowly, listening to each of her own steps. When she reached the stair landing overlooking the grand hall, she stopped. Julian stood in the middle of the crowd. His black suit fit perfectly. Light fell on his face from multiple angles, creating a calm expression carefully practiced. He was speaking with donors, handshakes, nods, controlled smiles. Cassandra stood close beside him, her hand resting on his arm like a familiar gesture. Her laughter rang out louder than necessary. A small tightness passed through Maya's chest. Not jealousy, but misalignment, like two worlds brushing against each other without fitting. Maya turned away and stepped into the small upstairs kitchen. She poured water. The glass felt cool in her hand. As she turned back, a voice sounded behind her, close enough that it did not need to be raised, enjoying the party. Cassandra leaned against the railing. Her gaze was sharp. The faint scent of wine lingered around her. She looked Maya up and down slowly, as if reading an assessment. "I'm just getting water for Noah," Maya said. Cassandra smiled. "Julian talks about you a lot, says you've done what no one else could. Says this house is quieter because of you. It sounds very touching." Maya remained silent and turned to leave. "He doesn't look at you the way he looks at me," Cassandra continued, lowering her voice. "He looks at you the way he looked at Elena." The name fell into the empty hallway, not loud but sharp enough. Maya froze for a beat and turned back. "What did you say?" Cassandra tilted slightly, as if losing her balance. Her hand brushed Maya's apron for a moment, so brief it felt almost accidental, then withdrew, then smiled. "So clumsy," she said. "You should check your pocket. People here are very sensitive about things that don't belong to you." Cassandra turned away, descending the stairs and dissolving into the light and music. Maya stood still. Her heart raced. She set the glass of water on the window ledge and reached into her pocket. Cold metal touched her fingertips. Maya pulled out a diamond bracelet, heavy, cold. Its light cast a sharp reflection on the wall. She had not yet understood when the music below faltered. A scream cut through the hall, high and clear, slicing across every conversation. "Thief!" Cassandra stood in the center of the grand hall, arm outstretched toward the staircase. Her eyes found Maya instantly. Her expression shifted into perfect outrage. "She took my bracelet," Cassandra said. I saw her coming out of the private area. Heads lifted, gazes turned. Whispers spread as quickly as a sudden change in wind. Julian turned, his eyes locked onto the staircase. He saw Maya. He saw the bracelet in her hand. Maya stood still. She did not hide it. She did not run. "I didn't take it," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it was clear. Cassandra gave a thin smile. A waitress with overdue bills and a bracelet worth more than a year's salary. Who has the motive here? The air froze. Julian took one step toward the stairs. He said nothing. His gaze darkened, revealing nothing. Maya looked at him. For the first time since she had stepped into Ravenshaw, she did not know where she stood. And as a twisted version of the truth was thrown into the center of the house, before anyone could even touch it, everyone had already heard the first crack. Julian said nothing for the first few seconds. The silence stretched long enough for every gaze in the grand hall to waver. Whispers shifted direction. The music did not return. The light stayed bright, but no one saw their beauty anymore. Julian stepped onto the staircase one step at a time, slow, unhurried. When he reached Maya, he held out his hand, not as an order, not as a demand, but with a calm so complete the room seemed to hold its breath. "Give me the bracelet," he said. Maya placed the bracelet in his hand. The cold metal left her skin. It felt lighter for a moment, yet the space it left behind felt heavier. Julian turned the bracelet under the hallway lights. Reflections glinted along the clasp. He leaned closer, examining it carefully. "This clasp has a safety lock," Julian said. "It requires 2 actions at the same time to open. It cannot be removed unless the wearer knows how." Cassandra laughed sharply. "Are you defending her, a servant?" Julian did not look at Cassandra. He flipped the bracelet to its inner side. "If it isn't on a wrist, this bracelet should be in the safe in the private room. That safe opens by fingerprint. Only mine." The whispers stopped completely. Cassandra froze for a beat, then recovered her smile. "Perhaps I was careless. Perhaps I misplaced it." Julian lifted his head. His gaze was no longer polite, no longer evasive. He looked straight at her. "No," he said. "You were not careless. You put it in her pocket." A heavy silence fell across the hall. Cassandra opened her mouth, then closed it. She stepped forward, her voice rising. "You can't trust someone like her over me." "I trust consistency," Julian replied. "And you just broke it." He turned to security. "Please escort Ms. Vale out of my house, now." Cassandra looked around. Faces that had stood close to her now avoided her eyes. No one spoke. No one defended her. She forced a smile, then turned on her heel. The sharp sound of her heels struck the stone floor again and again, fading toward the gates. The air collapsed like a balloon losing its breath. Julian turned back to the crowd. "The party's over," he said. "Thank you for coming." No further explanation was needed. Guests began to leave, hurried goodbyes, curious glances. Ravenshaw slowly emptied, revealing the exhaustion beneath the shine. When the hall was left with only sparse footsteps, Julian turned to Maya. She was still standing on the landing, her arms hanging loose. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a question waiting to be answered. "Are you all right?" he asked. Maya nodded, but her question lay elsewhere. "When the last guests leave," she said, Cassandra said I resemble Elena. You haven't explained that. Julian fell silent. He turned away a few steps and set the bracelet on the table. His shoulders tightened as if a door inside him had just been struck hard. She had too much to drink, he said. She didn't know what she was saying. Maya did not move closer. She stayed where she was. Julian, she said softly, without accusation, without pressure. I need to know where I stand. Julian turned back. His eyes avoided hers for a very brief moment, long enough for Maya to see, long enough for her to understand that an answer existed. It simply had not been spoken. Not tonight, Julian said. Please. Maya looked at him. In that moment, she saw two men existing at once, the man who had just stood up to protect her in front of the entire house, and the man holding tightly to a secret at any cost. What about Noah? Maya asked. Is he asleep? Julian exhaled. He is. He paused. Thank you. If you hadn't been here tonight. Maya nodded. She did not need thanks. She turned and walked up the stairs, each step light, but no longer as steady as before. In the room, Noah slept peacefully, breathing evenly, the paper boat still in his hand. Maya pulled the blanket higher. She sat beside the bed for a long while, listening to that breathing like an anchor. In the hallway, Julian stood alone. He looked toward the east wing, the door sealed shut, the unsaid things waiting behind it, heavy and patient. He knew the truth could not stay hidden forever, and when it surfaced, everything that was calm would be swept away. Outside, the sea wind began to strengthen. Waves struck the cliffs with a steady, heavy rhythm. At Ravenshore, after the fractured night of the gala, quiet returned. But this time, it carried a warning that the next storm would not come from the lights, but from what had been hidden for far too long. The storm had been forecast since morning, but Ravenshore was not accustomed to preparing for anything beyond control. Clouds rolled in low and heavy, the sky turning a weighty gray-purple. Wind from the sea pushed deep into the grounds, threading through the trees like invisible hands. Maya was in the kitchen, preparing a late lunch for Noah. He arranged pieces of bread by color, slowly and carefully. The way he focused brought a temporary calm to the house. Julian's phone vibrated for the third time within an hour. He stood by the study window, watching the road leading to the gate. Rain began to fall, each drop heavy. I have to go into the city, he said as he came down to the kitchen. The meeting was moved. The Bay Bridge may close if the wind gets stronger. Maya looked up. Noah followed her gaze. He hated sudden changes. How long? She asked. Late evening at the latest, Julian replied. He bent down to Noah's level. Dad will call. You stay with Maya. Safe. Noah nodded, but his hand tightened slightly in Maya's shirt. Maya placed her hand on his back, steadying him. She looked at Julian. There was something in his eyes, both urgent and restrained, as if he were weighing things left unsaid. Before leaving, Julian stopped at the doorway. He looked at Maya longer than usual. If the power goes out, he said, the security system will reset automatically. Lock the doors by hand. Keep Noah in his room. And Maya, he paused. Avoid the east wing. The roof there isn't safe during heavy rain. I know, Maya said. Her voice was calm, but a faint tension tightened in her chest. She did not ask more. The door closed. The sound of the car faded. The wind grew stronger. The afternoon passed slowly. Maya drew the curtains and turned on soft lights. They played puzzles, then drew with crayons. When thunder cracked, Noah startled. Maya lowered her voice and guided him into the familiar breathing rhythm. Count. Pause. Count again. He followed, slow but steady. By evening, rain poured down like a wall. The lights flickered, then stabilized. Maya made hot cocoa. Warmth spread, the sweet scent pushing back the damp smell of wind and rain. Noah drank a few sips, his eyes growing heavy. She took him to his room earlier than usual. Before leaving, Maya checked the doorstop, the headphones, the nightlight. She kissed his hair lightly. Here, she whispered. He smiled faintly and turned his face into the pillow. Thunder struck closer. The lights went out. The house plunged into thick darkness. Then, the generator rumbled weakly. Hallway lights glowed dim, casting long, distorted shadows. Maya stood still for a beat, listening. Everything remained in place. She locked the door bolts as instructed, went to the kitchen to turn off the electric stove, checked the flashlight batteries. When she returned to the hallway, she heard a door shift softly. Not thunder, not wind. A small, quick sound, like a latch touching. "Noah," she called softly. No answer. Maya moved faster. Noah's room was empty. The blanket was askew. The paper boat was gone from the bed. The window rattled in its frame. Her throat tightened, but she did not let fear take over. She listened. A small giggle drifted from afar, tangled with the wind. "Noah, no," she said, her voice still low. The sound came from the end of the hallway, from the direction of the east wing. Maya stopped before the large wooden doors. The latch was ajar. Cold wind spilled out. Julian's words echoed in her mind. "Avoid the east wing. The roof isn't safe." But the giggle came again, closer. She placed her hand on the door. One brief hesitation. Then she pushed. The space inside was different, unnaturally quiet. Thick carpet, emergency lights casting a glow along the walls. No sign of dampness or leaking. A faint scent of lavender and old paper lingered. Maya moved slowly, flashlight sweeping across closed rooms. At the end of the hall, a dark door stood slightly open. The sound came from there. Maya approached. Her hand was cold. As she touched the handle, lightning tore through the sky outside, light flashing through the crack. In that instant, she saw Noah sitting on the floor, his back against an easel, holding a leather-bound notebook. Maya opened the door. Noah looked up. "Mommy's book," he whispered, as if sharing a secret. Maya stepped in, knelt, and reached out her hand. "We're going back to the room," she said. Her voice was strangely calm. He shook his head and pointed to a canvas covered with cloth on the easel. Maya pulled the cloth away. She froze. The portrait beneath the emergency light was so vivid it could not be mistaken. The face, the lines, the small birthmark near the collarbone. Everything was her, not similar, identical. Outside, the wind screamed harder. The generator faltered for a beat, then continued. Maya heard her own heartbeat, slow and heavy. Behind her, the door eased shut, as if the house itself were sealing away a truth that had waited far too long. Maya could not take her eyes off the portrait. The emergency light trembled with the wind, making the colors on the canvas seem to move. The curve at the corner of the mouth, the small birthmark beneath the collarbone. The slightly angled gaze, as if holding a secret. This was not a vague resemblance. It was a match so exact it sent a chill through her, as if someone had placed a mirror into the past and carried it intact into the present. Noah sat close beside her, clutching the leather-bound notebook to his chest. "Mommy's book," he repeated, his voice a whisper, as if afraid to wake the house itself. Maya swallowed hard. She knelt down, placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying herself from shaking. "Let's go back to the room first," Maya said. But Noah shook his head and held the notebook out to her. His eyes were not afraid, only expectant, as if this was what he had been searching for all along. Maya opened the notebook. The paper was thick, yellowed with age. The handwriting was soft, slanted, blurred in places by water. The scent of old paper and oil paint blended together, heavy and familiar. The first page held no full name, only 2 handwritten letters, E.A., and beneath them a single line. "If anyone reads these words, please listen." Maya turned the page. The early pages were sketches. Her face, in many states, sleeping, smiling, frowning. Some lines stopped midway, as if interrupted by something urgent. Maya's heartbeat slowed, growing heavier. She felt as though she were intruding into a private room where memory had been carefully stored. On the following pages, the writing grew denser. "We were born on the same day. 2 children so alike that our mother marked us with a red thread. But we did not grow up together. A decision was made when we were too small to understand. One of us had to go. I stayed." She disappeared. Maya stopped. Her chest tightened. She turned the page. "I searched for you for years. I searched in crowds, in mirrors, in nameless photographs. When I met Julian, I thought I had found a harbor. But there are hollows that love cannot fill. They only grow when left untouched. Maya heard the rain strike harder outside. The room remained still, too still. The next pages were confessions, of fear, of anonymous letters, of altered photographs, of the sensation of being watched. The handwriting became more urgent, more slanted. They want me to believe Julian will take Noah away, that he is not safe, that I must leave now, take my child, find you. I hesitated. But tonight I will drive. I will tell the truth. If anything happens, please believe that I tried. Maya did not realize she was crying until a drop fell onto the page, smearing the ink. She wiped her face, drew a deep breath. Noah watched her, his eyes too serious for his age. "Mommy looks like you," he said, "but you are here." Maya pulled him into her arms. She had no explanation, only a truth unfolding, layer by layer, heavy and sharp. A sound echoed in the hallway, not wind, not thunder, fast, heavy footsteps. The door behind them opened. Julian stood there, soaked. Water dripped from his coat onto the floor. His hair was plastered down, his eyes locked onto the room, the easel, the notebook in Maya's hands. He did not speak. He simply stood still, as if moving would shatter everything. "You came sooner than I expected," Maya said, her voice sounding unfamiliar even to herself. Julian stepped inside and closed the door. He looked at the portrait, looked at Noah, then looked at Maya. Everything he had avoided now stood plainly before him, allowing no retreat. "You went into the East Wing," he said. "Not an accusation, only confirmation." Noah pressed closer to Maya. Julian lowered himself, keeping his distance. "Are you okay?" he asked. Noah nodded. Maya held out the notebook. She did not force him to take it. She simply placed it between them. Julian took it and opened it. Each page turned like a breath held too long. When he stopped at the final page, his shoulders sank almost imperceptibly. "You knew," Maya said. She did not ask. She stated it. Julian closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. "I knew she had a sister," he said. "I did not know where to look. And then, when you appeared at that restaurant," he paused, "I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Maya asked. "Afraid the truth would drag everything into the light. Afraid that if you knew who you were, you would leave." Outside, thunder tore the sky apart. The generator shuddered. Noah tightened his grip on Maya's hand. She bent down, pressed her forehead to his. "We need to leave this room," she said. "Not to run, but to breathe." Julian nodded. He looked at the door, then at them. For the first time since Maya had entered Ravenshore, he did not command. He asked, "Please stay, but not in the dark." Maya looked at the portrait one last time, then closed the notebook. She took Noah's hand and stepped over the threshold. The truth had been touched, and from that moment on, there was no path back to the old fragile calm. The storm was no longer outside. It had entered the house. Wind screamed down the hallways like a living creature, slamming into the glass panes until they rattled violently. Emergency lights flickered, shadows stretched and collapsed with each pulse of failing light. Maya tightened her grip on Noah's hand, feeling his heart racing but not spiraling. He was trying. So was she. Julian moved ahead, fast but not frantic. He led them out of the East Wing, closing the doors behind them like sealing the lid on the past. When they reached the main corridor, he stopped and turned to face Maya. In the dim light, the fractures he usually hid so carefully were visible on his face. "I kept the secret for too long," Julian said, "and now the price is coming." Maya did not answer. She waited. She had learned that some truths only surfaced when the speaker had nowhere left to hide. "Elena did not die in an accident," Julian continued, his voice low but steady. "The brakes failed. I hired someone to check afterward. There were cut marks, but the file disappeared before it could be completed." Noah looked up, not understanding the words, but sensing the tension. Maya pulled him closer. She did not ask who did it. She looked at Julian and waited for the part he was avoiding. "Someone in my family was involved," Julian said. He turned his face away for a brief moment. "That person is still here, still has a key, still knows how to make things look accidental." Maya drew a deep breath. The house shuddered as lightning struck close. The generator roared, then weakened, the light dimming another notch. She understood what Julian was saying without it being named. The danger was not outside. It had always been inside. "That is why you kept the east wing sealed," Maya said. "Not because of leaks, but because what was there could speak." Julian nodded. "And because I believed that if Elena's likeness returned to this house, that person would make a mistake." He looked straight at Maya. "I never imagined the one carrying that likeness would be you." The air between them froze. Maya understood immediately what he had left unsaid. She did not feel anger. What rose instead was something cold and lucid, like the sea just before a massive wave breaks. "You kept me here waiting for that to happen," she said, not accusing, only naming it. Julian opened his mouth, then closed it. "I was wrong," he said. "I never expected that I would care." Noah tugged at Maya's hand. She bent down. "It isn't safe here," he whispered. Maya nodded. "We're going to the room." She turned to Julian. "Lock the doors. Call the police. Don't let anyone be alone." Julian pulled out his phone. No signal. He cursed under his breath. The storm knocked out the towers. The bay bridges closed. We're trapped. A dry sound echoed from upstairs. Not thunder, not wind. Metal striking metal. Then the soft click of a door closing. Noah startled. Maya turned instinctively, placing Noah behind her. Julian raised a hand for silence. He listened. 1 beat, 2. Then footsteps, fast and heavy in the upper hallway. "Someone is here," Maya said, her voice low and firm. Julian nodded. He pulled them into the nearest room and locked it. The emergency light flickered, then died. The generator fell silent. Darkness swallowed everything. In the dark, Noah's breathing grew loud. Maya placed her hand on his chest and guided him. "Count. Pause. Count again." He followed. Outside the door, the footsteps stopped directly in front of them. A voice came through, familiar and cold. "Open the door. We just want to talk." Julian clenched his fist. He did not open it. The latch shook, harder, more desperate. Maya scanned the room for an escape. A window opened onto the exterior fire stairs. Wind slapped her face as she released the latch. She turned to Julian. "I'll get Noah out. You hold them off." Julian nodded without argument. Maya lifted Noah and climbed through the window. Cold metal slick with rain. She slipped for a moment, then caught herself. Inside, the door burst open, a heavy impact, a strangled cry. Julian. Maya did not look back. She ran. Wind tore at her. Rain lashed down. In the flash of lightning, she saw a figure ahead at the end of the escape route, a figure running, and in their hands something small, struggling. "Noah," Maya screamed. Her voice was shredded by the wind. The figure turned, a smile flashing in the lightning, then vanished toward the exterior stairs. Maya stopped for a single beat, then sprinted after them. In the howling storm, the truth was no longer the most terrifying thing. What was terrifying was that the child she had promised to protect had just been torn from her arms. And Ravenshore, at last, had revealed its true face. Maya did not think. She just ran. Rain lashed her face like needles. Wind shoved against her, plastering her coat to her back. Beneath her feet were the slick metal steps of the outdoor fire escape. She gripped the railing and rushed downward, her heart pounding, her mind strangely clear. In the chaos, one single thought kept her upright. Noah was ahead. The figure ran toward the old boathouse where the edge of the cliff met the sea. Lightning tore across the sky, revealing a hunched back, a dark raincoat, and arms clamped tightly around a small body. Crying was shredded by the wind, yet it still cut through the night and struck straight into Maya's chest. "Noah," she called. Her voice broke, but she did not slow. The boathouse door flew open. Maya lunged inside, slipped for a beat, then caught her balance. It was dark and damp. The smell of rotting wood, salt, and old oil hung thick. Rain sprayed through the gaps, running in streams across the floor. At the far end, the space opened into a void, where the wooden planks ended at a gaping drop into black churning water. The figure turned. In the lightning, the face was revealed. Not a stranger. Gareth Pike, the former manager of Noir Harbor. His eyes were bloodshot. His smile twisted, his arm trembled, but his grip around Noah tightened. "Stop!" Gareth snarled. "One more step and I drop the kid." Maya stopped. She raised both hands, palms open, empty. "Okay," she said, lowering her voice, steady. "I'm here. Just me." Noah sobbed. Maya locked her eyes on his. She inhaled deeply, lowered her breath, guided him. "Count with me." Pause. Count again. Noah's eyes fluttered, clinging to her voice like a final thread. Gareth let out a harsh laugh. "I lost everything, you know that. Fired. Blacklisted from every restaurant in the city. Debts. Someone told me all I had to do was take the kid and everything would be fine." "Who?" Maya asked. She did not move closer. She did not step back. She held the distance where words could still reach. Gareth shook his head, smiling crookedly. "What does it matter? It's over anyway." A sound came from behind. Heavy footsteps. Julian appeared at the boathouse entrance, soaked, one hand clutching his head, the other holding a gun. He stopped when he saw Noah at the edge. His eyes never left the child. "Don't shoot," Maya said without turning. "Don't make noise." Julian froze. Rain hammered harder on the tin roof. Wind screamed through the cracks like a warning. Gareth spotted Julian. His face twisted. "One more step and I drop him," he shouted. Maya stepped forward half a step. Only half. "Gareth," she said, low and firm. "Look at me. You're not a killer. You're just scared." Gareth cursed, but his arm loosened around Noah for the briefest moment, enough for Maya to see, enough for her to continue. "You once gave me a shift when I was hungry," she said. "Do you remember? You're not as bad as you think." Thunder exploded overhead. Lightning revealed another figure at the door, just stepping inside. An older man in a neat raincoat, crowbar in hand. He smiled, calm in a way that was terrifying. "Enough," he said. "End this." Julian spun around. Uncle Malcolm Ashford stepped forward, voice even. "The plan changes. No ransom, no witnesses." He looked at Gareth as if at a tool. "Gareth, throw the boy down." Gareth shook his head. "No, that's not it." Malcolm bent and picked up the gun that had slipped from Julian's hand when he staggered from the earlier blow. He aimed it straight at Maya. "Do it, or you die first." Gareth looked at Noah, then at Maya. His eyes filled with tears. In that instant, the choice was made without words. He shoved hard, not toward the water, toward Maya. Maya lunged. She caught Noah midair and crashed onto the wooden floor, curling her body around him. Malcolm pulled the trigger. A dry crack rang out, then stopped. The gun jammed, soaked through. Maya did not run. She reached for the flare gun mounted on the wall, yanked it free, pulled the trigger on instinct. Red light exploded, tearing through the boathouse. Malcolm screamed, dropped the gun, staggered backward. His foot slipped on the wet boards. His body vanished through the opening. The sea swallowed the sound. Gareth collapsed, clutching his face. Julian dropped to his knees, gasping. Maya held Noah, rocking him gently. "It's okay. The storm is gone. You're safe." Outside, the wind still howled, but it no longer felt terrifying. In her arms, Noah gave one final sob and went still. And in that moment, between rain and sea, Maya knew there were things that did not require blood to be paid. Only someone willing to stand still and say the right words at the right time. Dawn arrived after a long night, and this time it carried no unease. Ravenshore was sealed off at first light. Police cars lined the entrance, their flashing lights reflecting off the sea, which still rolled slowly after the storm. Gareth Pike was led out of the boathouse in handcuffs, his face ashen, his eyes hollow, like a man waking from a dream to find every door closed. He did not resist. He did not defend himself. He only lowered his head as he passed Maya. Offshore, rescue teams continued searching for Malcolm Ashford. The water beneath the cliff was deep and violent. Waves struck the rocks without pause. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood. Some people choose the darkness and disappear with it. Maya sat in the ambulance, a thermal blanket pulled over her shoulders. Noah slept on her lap, breathing evenly, his small hand still gripping the crumpled paper boat. Julian stood by the ambulance door, a bandage wrapped around his forehead. He refused to leave until he saw Noah sleeping peacefully. When their eyes met, no explanation was needed. That morning, Julian requested a DNA test. No delay. No more secrets allowed to survive. Samples were taken immediately at the field hospital. Maya did not object. She had gone too far to be afraid of the truth. The results came faster than she expected. 99.9% match. Maya Bennett was Elena Ashford's twin sister. Noah was her nephew. Julian read the report twice. Then he sat down in front of Maya, ignoring any remaining distance. "You are Noah's family," he said, his voice low and steady. "And you are the person I want to rebuild this home with. Not Ravenshore, not the walls, but a real home." Maya looked at him for a long time. She thought of the years spent alone, of the moment she knelt on a restaurant floor and chose to listen instead of giving in to fear. Finally, she nodded. Not because of the past, but because the present was opening in front of her. A few days later, when everything had settled, Julian called Maya into his study. Afternoon light streamed through the window, soft and real. He placed an envelope on the desk. Maya frowned. "A termination letter," he said seriously. She froze. Then he smiled. "I cannot keep employing you as a nanny if I want to date you properly." Maya laughed, light and tear-filled. Noah stood at the door, listening, cheering as if he had just witnessed the most obvious thing in the world. 6 months later, Noir Harbor officially closed. Scandals were exposed. Stories that had long been buried finally found their voices. On the old grounds, the Elena Foundation was established. No flashy signage, no loud opening ceremony, just a quiet center for children with sensory processing challenges and autism. Maya helped run the Calming Room program, a space of soft light and low sound where children learn to regulate their emotions instead of being forced into silence. She did not teach through theory. She taught through presence. Julian stepped back at the right moment. He learned to listen more than he spoke, at home, at work, and with Noah. That afternoon, in the garden behind the center, Noah ran across the grass chasing a newly arrived puppy. Maya sat on a picnic blanket, a deep blue sapphire ring on her hand, the color of the sea after a storm. Not flashy, but steady. Noah ran back breathless, his face bright. "Maya," he said, "I am not lucky." Julian and Maya looked at him. "I am loved," Noah said with certainty. Maya pulled him into her arms. Julian placed his hand on both of them. In that moment, there was no loss left. Only the fullness that comes from things that cannot be bought. Julian sat beside her and rested his hand over hers. "We heard it," he said. "Both of us." Maya leaned her head against his shoulder. She thought of the old rented room, of the quiet nights, of the moment she knelt on a restaurant floor and spoke the words that needed to be spoken. Life does not change direction through miracles. It changes when someone chooses to stop and listen. If this story touched you, leave a comment. Share where you are watching from. Share a moment when you chose to do the right thing, even knowing it would be hard. And if you want to keep walking alongside stories of healing, courage, and love after loss, do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the thing that changes our lives is simply someone willing to listen.